What's up, guys? Welcome to Strength Side. Today we're going to go through a strength and mobility warm-up. You can use this for any athletic endeavor like lifting weights, going out for a run, playing some basketball, whatever you're into. Okay? So, Josh is going to be our subject today. So I'm going to have Josh lay down on his back. We're starting out with some dead bugs, but we're going to add a little bit to the dead bug here. You might have seen us do dead bugs in other videos. However, today we're going to add in some abduction and adduction into the dead bug. So what Josh is going to do is go into a dead bug where opposite arm and leg are going down. What he's then going to do is adduct his shoulder, trying to trace the ground. If you can, keep your hand just slightly brushing the ground. Then we'll come back up and do the other side. So the whole time he's having to stabilize his core while getting in some good upward rotation in the scats, and he's looking like he's doing pretty good there. Cool. Next up, we're going to have Josh do a glute bridge. He's going to do it with an internal rotation bias in the opposite leg. So what he's going to do is bring his opposite elbow to his knee on the opposite side and then do a glute bridge. So what this is doing is by bringing his knee up, he's going to actually have to set his pelvis in a neutral or even more posterior tilt, which is going to allow him to get a little more activation from his glutes, and it's a little more applicable to actual movements. And then he's actually working on some internal rotation there, which is going to help with your hip flexion if you're going to be doing some deep squats or anything where you have hip flexion. Cool. Next up, we're going to have him flip over onto his hands and knees, and we're going to go bear pose. So from a quadruped, we're just going to have him lift his knees off the ground about an inch or so. The closer to the ground the knees are, the better, but we don't want them touching. Now, all he's going to do here is extend his hip. So he's going to kick his leg back here, and then he's going to bring his knee up and across. Okay? So he's actually working into some internal rotation and adduction of the hip there. Okay? Now, we can also have him do the opposite. We can have him bring his knee up, move into external rotation. Little external rotation bias there, and abduction. So we'll get him moving in all ranges of motion through the hip there. All we'll have him stabilize through the scats and the core. Cool. Next up, we're going to half kneeling position. Switch it up. We're going to have Josh grab a kettlebell. We're going to do what's called a bottoms up press with a kettlebell. Now, if you don't have a kettlebell, it's not the biggest deal, but we'd prefer you have a kettlebell here, and you'll see why. So go ahead and get into a bottoms up. Kettlebell is flipped on its head. Okay? So what's having to do is it's making him stabilize everything from his core, his scap, his elbow, and wrist. All has to be extremely stable for him to perform the press. And what we're going to do is have him press overhead. What we're watching out for here is not letting him bend at the back too much. You want to stay nice and tight through the core here. Reaching overhead. You can move into internal rotation at the top. So you're actually working that end range motion of shoulder flexion there. And ideally, with a bottoms up press, you want to keep it out in front. Okay, we're not really moving out to the side too much. Cool. So Josh does a good job with this. This is probably actually pretty heavy. We'd usually go a little lighter, but we don't have enough kettlebells right now, so that's not going to be okay. He can handle it though. Okay, and finally, we're going to get him moving from a half kneeling to a standing position and a split squat. So all it is he's literally going to go from that same position and stand up. Okay. Now what we're looking for here is, again, not bending at the back too much. Ideally, if you're doing a split squat, you should actually feel a little bit of stretch in the front of this hip at the bottom position here. Okay. And what we can do to progress this, if this feels a little too easy for you, we can actually elevate the front foot on anything, grab a plate or whatever. That way you're actually getting into a little more hip flexion at the top, or at the bottom of the position, so we're working a bigger range of motion. So we effectively went through every range of motion we would need him to, while stabilizing everything from the core, scaps, shoulders, you name it, hips. So you got anything else to say, Josh?
Check out the free mobility and strength program on MoveStrongNow.com. And you guys can learn all this stuff, exercise tutorials for free.
Cool. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.